My name is Leon Kettle. I am currently 22 years old and I'm from Newcastle upon Tyne, born and bred Geordie. I had quite a strict upbringing, to be fair. Like my mum's quite an authoritarian, which is I think served me well like in my life. But I had quite a normal English childhood, to be honest. My childhood was very much sort of school focused. I had a lot of homework when I was a kid. I always used to feel like I was doing some sort of like history project or something like that. And my childhood was pretty much that and me jumping around, and I still jump around today. So since about 14 or 15 years old, I've done parkour, which is essentially the official definition is like getting from A to B quickly, but it's basically just jumping and flipping around. Used to make videos doing that sort of thing. Made quite a lot of friends through it. And I've actually got a Muslim friend through that who I still see today. He's from Malaysia. He's a pretty nice guy. My family structure growing up was, well, originally it was like my mum, my dad, me and my brother sort of living together. And then when my parents split up when I was about 12, it was just me, my mum and my brother. And I think that's quite a important part of who I've become today, because a lot of who I am is as a result of my mum's upbringing and my mum's values that she instilled in me. The strict upbringing has definitely made me be harsh on myself, but like harsh in a productive way as well as sometimes in a maybe too much. But it means that I'm when I go for something, I'm disciplined in it. You know, consistency is an important part of making something work in the long term. And I feel like when I get into something, I'm consistent in it. And that's a result of that strict upbringing. Like, I've always been taught to like respect a righteous authority as well. And so like someone who's obviously not abusing their power, but that's, if I didn't have the mum that I do, I think I'd have more of a like sort of rebellious nature, but it's just not there. It really isn't there. Yeah, it's made me a disciplined person for sure. So in regards to the religion, like that I grew up around, there's the sort of stereotypical, I want to say like bumper sticker Christian sort of element, because I would say at the time when I was growing up, that's how my mum might have identified herself, as a Christian, but beyond that, maybe nothing else. My mum talked about religion a lot. Religion was a topic that was always on my mind, especially like when I reached the ages of 13 or 14, but I wasn't baptised. I wasn't raised in sort of the presence of anyone praying or anything like that. The exception is that my auntie is quite religious, but she lives in South Africa, so I never got to see that. So my first ever interaction with Islam that I can sort of clearly recall was with a good friend who I had who was a Muslim, and he was a very strong Muslim, as in he practiced, he had I feel a clear understanding of what the foundations of Islam was at quite a young age. Or that's what my perception was at the time. So that was when I was about 14. The first time 14 was probably the age where I first ever really thought about things like, why do we exist? Is there any sort of collective purpose to humanity? What's morality? Those sort of things. And we had this sort of like a rows of two in RE class, and me and the Muslim friend sat together, and there was a couple of other friends that we knew that sat in front of us. And we would often sit for like the time where we weren't doing the work, discussing those questions of morality, like what are the questions of the purpose of life. And that is what first brought me to learn about Islam. Within the space of a few weeks, the questions of what's the purpose of life came to be, oh, what's Islam all about? what is this religion that I've not really heard too much about? And we had a lot of discussions about that, and it was actually in classes where we were learning about Hinduism where I asked that, so I can't really remember too much about Hinduism because I spent so much time talking about Islam. Okay, the reason there's a large gap between the age of 14 and the age of 21 where I officially sort of went, right, okay, I'm a Muslim now, taking my Shahada and so forth, is so from the period of 14 to 16 or 17, let's say, I was learning bits and bobs about Islam from this friend that I had, reading bits of Quran. He lent me a Quran at the time. Well, he gave me one actually. Yeah, I learned a lot about Islam in those 3 years, but at the same time I had a girlfriend who I was quite serious about, and it was from the start, like from the very start of learning about Islam, I also had that girlfriend, so it was weighing up, the two couldn't exist together, and I became aware of that the more time came to pass. And actually what ended up happening was I was given kind of an ultimatum about it, like an unspoken ultimatum. And I actually at the time had my contentions with Islam still. I'd never really went to the mosque or anything at that time because I was a kid, and my mum was concerned about it because she knew that I was impressionable still. She was like, learn bits but take it slow, take it easy. So I still had contentions. I remember I always used to think about why women inherited less than men. I never could understand that when I was like 15 years old, naturally, I suppose. So I collected these contentions together and put them as a reason why I would sort of choose my girlfriend over the religion at the time. So that's what happened when I was 17. I kind of just left it. So as soon as I made the decision to essentially put my girlfriend before the religion that I was becoming very familiar with, that things started going downhill. The relationship had some very serious things that happened in it, and it went to dust within about 6 months. And then I went to uni straight after that, got into another relationship really quickly after that, and then exactly the same thing in a different way happened with that relationship. So that's when I'm about 20 years old, and I thought, the cycle's repeating itself here. And then it nearly did again. I thought, right, it's about time I look into Islam again, because since I made the decision to put it on the back burner, things had not been working out how I'd wanted to. I didn't feel a sort of contentment with my life in the way that I had back then. The turning point where I realised that Islam was the truth and what I wanted to follow in my life was during lockdown. Lockdown, I believe, was the reason that I was brought towards that. Like, it forced me to slow my life down, because naturally I'm a person who likes to just sort of have life at a high pace. And it really forced that slowing down of life and reflection. So I think I had sort of 2 points in my life where I was like ready to take the plunge, but in 2 different ways in terms of coming to Islam properly. The first one was in the lockdown. I had obviously had that time when I was in school where I'd learnt about the religion, and the fact that the concept of Tawheed, of the oneness of Allah, was so important to Islam. I feel like if that wasn't the way it was, I wouldn't have accepted the religion, because I've always really believed in a God, but I've never understood God's representation in any religion other than Islam, or I've never agreed with it, so to speak. So that was a big sort of plunging moment. And the more I learnt about that in a formal manner in lockdown, the more I was like, this is the religion I want to sort of, the more I was like, this is the religion I want to be a part of. The second plunger moment was when I actually started to go to the mosque, actually, because a lot of my experience with Islam up until 10 months ago, apart from those conversations with my friend in school, was in solitude. It was learning about it in the Quran. It was maybe watching YouTube videos, reading things online, that sort of thing. And I actually learned how to pray through like Quora, something ridiculous like that. So when I first came to the mosque, it was a really sort of monumental moment, because I was like, wow, all of these things I've been reading about and agreeing with now have a physical manifestation. And as soon as that was there, I felt more ready. And then when I was presented with the opportunity to take my Shahada, I just jumped on it because of that. So in terms of after I've made the decision to convert to Islam, and after I've made the decision to begin upon that journey, there was that issue of, well, where now? How do I expand my knowledge? Thankfully, within like 2 weeks of making that decision, I was informed of a class that was taking place in a creed class, to like learn about the foundations of the religion. It turned out to be, I think, around 18 weeks long. So like 18 lessons worth of content about several different concepts, like who Allah is, the scriptures, the angels, and so on and so forth. And I think that was really important for sort of keeping me on the right track at the start, because it meant that every Tuesday night I was learning something new and increasing my knowledge about my religion. And it also meant that every Tuesday night I had Muslims to speak to. And I think that was a really key point in making sure I didn't just regret the decision to take my Shahada, because I feel like if I was just sat in solitude again, like in lockdown, I might have been like, this wasn't the right decision, simply because it felt lonely. One thing that really took me aback right at the start was the emphasis on community and brotherhood. It really, honestly, did take me aback. There's never really been a great importance placed on that in any sort of, there's never been a great importance placed on community to me in my life before this, in the way that it has been now. Like, I remember once going to a mosque and eating with everybody, just on the floor, and I loved the simplicity of that, and like loads of people were having conversations with each other, having a chat with me, and it was just really nice to see that people were interested to talk to people. I think you can find in this day and age that people maybe aren't interested to talk to each other that much sometimes. So the importance placed on brotherhood was really, warm. It was really nice. I enjoyed it at the start. My advice to people who are thinking about religion, or who have just had a moment in their life where they've slowed down and stopped and wanted to reflect, is to really be honest with yourself about who you are and who you could be. I think it's really easy to go through life on autopilot and just let the wind blow you away, and just sort of go with any direction that it takes you. It's really easy to do that, because you can make yourself occupied with anything. You can give yourself any sort of purpose and never think twice. But for anybody who is thinking twice, just assess your situation from where you are now, honestly, and think about what it is you want out of life. And the majority of people, after thinking about that question, will answer something like happiness or truth. And happiness comes from truth, so seek the truth. My advice as a revert to Islam to other reverts to Islam would A, be go to the mosque. just go. I think it's very easy to just get overwhelmed with things at the start, and that can make you want to just take it easy on your own and just never go back to the mosque. Sometimes I think for myself, I found that there was certain times where I just really didn't feel like going out and getting there. But if you go to the mosque regularly and communicate with people who ultimately believe the same things as you, think the same things and have similar goals, you're gonna feel stronger and more confident. So advice number 1, go to the mosque. Advice number 2, take things at your own pace. Don't feel like you need to do everything in one day. Just make sure you're doing something. Don't like, there's a balance between complacency and being overly critical of yourself. And I think that if you learn how to be honest with where you are in terms of your relationship with Allah, that's the best advice I would give, I think. My advice to born Muslims, again, would probably be twofold. The first piece of advice, which is kind of just a little bit of a joke actually, is just treat reverts like normal people. I feel like I feel like born Muslims can sometimes like make too much of a big deal about reverts and give them too much credit. Like I've received credit for things which I shouldn't be receiving credit for. So that's one little funny piece of advice, I suppose. But the other piece of advice I would give is don't feel any shame, like especially if you're a young person who doesn't really know anything about the religion that they've been born into. That could have a lot to do with culture, the parents that you have, blah 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 blah. It could be many factors. So don't be too harsh on yourself if you don't feel like you're as strong of a Muslim as you would want to be. Just start today. I think the one main lesson that I've learned from life that sticks out when I think about it is that every day and every moment that passes by is a chance to do the thing that you've wanted to be doing for however long. Like, if you've wanted to start learning a new language, if you've wanted to learn more about your religion, if you've wanted to go to a new restaurant, every single day that passes by is a chance to do that thing. And as an extension of that, every day is a chance to make up for the past. Every day is a chance to take advantage of the time that you have. And every day is a chance to make a difference for the future. I think that it's so easy to forget that. And it's easy just to it's easy to take time for granted as well. And if you can be reminded of the preciousness of time in two ways, either that in like the negative sense that time's running out and you've only got today granted, or in the positive sense that like today is as good of a chance as tomorrow is. So yeah, I think that's something that I keep learning again and again and again in the same way and then in different ways. So I really like that lesson. Yeah.